And we're live.
Hello, man. How are you?
Good. How are you doing?
Very good. Yes. Lots going on at the moment. Very excited by today's topic, conversion rates, possibility frontiers, which is such a cool title.
All
You had
right.
me immediately typing you back when you said that. I was
Thank
like, what
you.
is that even?
Thank you. I had you as soon as I confused you.
Uh, well,
Yeah.
confused and intrigued, which is quite
Yeah.
good copywriting, I think, because it gets you engaged. That's the point.
The intriguing topic. Yes. So hello, everybody. People are popping in here. Hello, hello. Give us a like, love, comment, share. If you're watching in one of our Facebook locations, feel free to chat with us. You can do that on YouTube as well. So we'd love to know where you're listening from and how you're doing. Just give us a hi from whatever city you hail from. And of course, we'd love to weave your questions into the presentation today. And it's going to be a good one. Yeah, Michael, I think both of us are really animated and excited about this topic. And
Yeah.
so I think we'll bring our enthusiasm to it. And hopefully that transfers to everyone who's listening
Yeah.
and participating in this live show as well. It's a
I
great
think it
topic.
is. I could see that one person said awesome before we even started the show. So obviously the topic itself is exciting people on. I think it should. I think conversion rate is just, there's just so much behind that simple phrase.
Hmm.
And as you said to me before the show, people just blow past it when you're looking at analytics, whether it's Shopify or Amazon, same difference. And some people I've encountered in the Amazon world, not normally 7-figure sellers, but early stage people just don't even know how to find it. And I'm
Hmm.
like, wow, there's a discovery awaiting you. So yeah, I'm excited. Let's
Yeah.
get to this thing.
All right. Well, let's do it, friends. Let's jump into this. We're going to kick it off here. I think I'm going to start us, and we'll go from there. Without further ado, we ready?
Let's do this.
All right, here we go. What would happen if you doubled your e-commerce conversion rate? What would happen if you doubled it again after that? In this conversation, we're going to work through a strategic framework for pursuing radical conversion rate improvements to explore the bounds of what is possible for you in your situation. Welcome to the mini workshop. I'm going to call it a mini workshop on conversion rate possibility frontiers. Michael, are you ready to talk all things conversion rate?
I absolutely am. I'm intrigued by this phrase, conversion rate possibility frontiers. It sounds very mysterious. So before we get into details, give us a bit more context. What is that all about?
Yeah, sure. Of course. Yeah, this phrase is from the production management systems, textbooks or whatever. Production possibility frontiers is the concept. And I've co opted it and applied it to e commerce thinking. And I think it really fits as a nice framework to discuss this idea of exploring the possibilities of conversion rate potential in your site. And so, if you're just listening somewhere on your computer right now and you want to Google production possibility frontiers just to see the layout of the type of graph or chart it is, that's fine. I'll show it actually here in a moment. I think if on our live recording, if that makes the most sense, because it is a helpful framework and tool. And so that's sort of the origin of the phrase itself. Yeah.
Yeah, great. I think you've got a really beautiful set of graphics here. So if you listen to the podcast, obviously you won't hear that, but I guess we'll put it in the show notes at the ecommerceleader.com. Do you mind sharing that graph? Because I think it might give us a bit of a visual for
Yeah,
those
let me do
watching.
that, and for the live audience, so just look at it together, and then for the people listening, just imagine in your mind what I describe here for you. So the idea here that we're looking at is, imagine you've got a standard, a chart, like you'd chart something out with a left and right axis, and then on the let me zoom in on it here if I can. On the bottom left corner, imagine drawing a little bubble that just fits in the corner of the chart, and plug into that bubble your current conversion rate. Now, Michael, I'm thinking about this with the logic of a Shopify store owner.
Sure.
What's your thought in terms of how this is useful for Amazon sellers? We're going to walk through that before we move on to.
It's even simpler. Yeah, I mean, the thing about Amazon is that we don't get to see the bit where Amazon creates a brand, attracts people to the website, and all the stuff that Shopify or direct to
Mhm,
consumer store owners have to do. So
mhm,
it's even more basic. I mean, the conversion rate is, if you like, a more basic one of the things we can see and control. We don't get to see
mhm.
demographic data, we don't get to
Yeah.
see visits, all that stuff. But we do get shared the conversion rate data by Amazon, at least some of it. And so there's the exact same theory applies, no difference.
And in Seller Central, what's the phrase that you would, or what would you poke in around and look at?
Yeah, so you're looking at the business reports probably by ASIN, by parent ASIN or by child ASIN, depending whether you have variations or not. And within
Hmm.
that, you look for unit session percentage, which is basically the number of units sold in, say, a week or a month,
Hmm.
divided by the number of sessions in that period. That's the standard one that Amazon gives us
Okay.
automatically.
Yeah, and in Shopify, you'd look on your analytics tab, and then you'd see in the bottom left corner, you'd see your conversion rate. And so let's look at this for another moment. And so you've got your chart there, and you've got your little bubble in the bottom left corner, and you've plugged in what your current conversion rate in it is. And then what you do is just draw another bubble beyond that, up and to the right, and then add the double. Like if you're at 2% conversion rate, then that second bubble would be 4%, and then do a third bubble, and that bubble would be a double again. So the third one would be 8%. So you go from 2 to 4 to 8, and whatever your numbers are, then just draw it that way. That's a very simplistic view of the chart itself, and something that hopefully, zoom in a little bit there for the people who are watching, looking at this live. It gives you just a mental framework to think about. And of course, on the left-hand side of the chart, you could plot it as your conversion rate percentage. So it could go from 2% to 2.5 to 3 to 3.5. And on the bottom of the chart, you could plot your current revenue. So if you're currently making, let's just say your current conversion rate is 2%, and you currently make $10,000 a month. Well, what would happen is if you doubled your conversion rate to 4%, and you can just plot your money that way, going forward. Uh, and it's a very simple concept, but as I like to say, uh, big doors swing on little hinges. And if you can focus on your conversion rate performance, then it really unlocks a whole host of benefits for you that I think are important for us to work through and talk about for a couple minutes before we jump into some specific tactics about how to do this. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. It's often one of the things we're talking about with our sort of parallel show, the new one for season 3, the call-in show.
Hmm.
We talked about the fact that curation and deciding what to focus on out of the many, many metrics we get thrown up by any internet marketing system or any internet-based system at all. What do we focus on? And I think one of the things we can do today is to sell people on the importance of really focusing on conversion rates. And I think you and I are both convinced, but sell us a bit more on this. Why is focusing on conversion rate really a top priority rather than just an also ran for you?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'm in conversations daily with our clients that we work with on their e-commerce sites, and it's just a frequent refrain that I hear, which is, "I need more traffic. I need more traffic." And our minds as e-commerce sellers, for some reason, gravitate toward that. I need more traffic. I need more customers. Top of funnel thinking. But as a practical matter, if you just focus on your conversion rate, you'd actually, let's just say, if you doubled your conversion rate, you'd be doubling your revenue with zero additional marketing cost. So think about that. No incremental marketing cost, but you doubled your revenue. You'd radically transform the results of your marketing work that you do. So, if your current conversion rate's a lot higher than any Facebook ad you set up, any YouTube ad, any email campaign you do, all of those perform radically better because your site performance is better. And so those are two benefits. Two more, and then we'll just talk about these. But um, you'd make more money from fewer customers. And all things being equal, the leanest possible system to run is the one that makes maximum income from minimum customers. Not that you don't want to serve the whole world, but you get my point. The fewer customers you have in your system, that gets you to your viable business revenue numbers, the better off you are, because you've got fewer customer service complaints, fewer returns, refunds, drama, site traffic problems, if to the extent there are good problems to have when they break your site and that kind of thing. And then this fourth idea is, um, if you really plot this out, a doubling of your revenue, your top line revenue, in this manner, without incremental expense for advertising and that kind of thing, will likely mean quite a dramatic improvement in your net profit. And so it's not just a doubling of your net profit because you didn't increase your advertising related costs. So the power and beauty of a simplistic focus on conversion rate optimization is nothing to be like ignored. I mean, it's literally like you could spend years trying to get really good at this, and it would pay off in spades over and over for you. And so there you go. I mean, that's some of the reason in my mind why, and I'm sure there are many other reasons why it's a good idea. But
I think this is just incredibly powerful. I just want to hammer home a couple of those points because I think they're really critical. I mean, the first thing I want to say is more than doubling your profits. I think it's really easy to blow
mhm,
past this one. It's because we get somehow, as you said, traffic's one of the obsessions. I don't even know why, but we've all been trained to think it's important. If you're
mhm,
on Amazon, I guess it's because it's all about traffic. It's such a big traffic engine. That's why people get obsessed with it.
mhm,
And then the other obsession that's a red herring is revenue. I mean, if you're on Amazon, it doesn't even touch your bank account. It isn't yours to start with.
mhm,
It's such a red herring. It's so irrelevant, and yet it seems so important. But profit's the only thing we get to keep. And it's if you are selling something at a 30% margin and you can double your conversion rate without increasing your ad spend, then you are probably going to be looking at, a tripling of your profit, which is just not small. I mean, that could take your business, if you're going to add a 3x multiplier to it, let's be
mhm,
modest, and just sell an Amazon-based business, which is not as valuable as we know as a direct-to-consumer Shopify-based one, then you probably you could have added another $200,000-300,000 to your
mhm,
business value just in one
mhm.
go.
Yeah.
Which, when you extrapolate over, the period of the business value, and if you sell it, a lot of people do sell out their businesses now, as one of our mastermind members just
Mhm.
did.
Yeah.
That is really massive in its
Yeah.
impact,
Yeah.
all from one metric, the conversion rate.
Yeah.
So that's the first thing to say. The other thing
It
I would say is
yeah.
this: if you sell on Amazon, Amazon understands this. That's why you cannot separate getting a conversion rate good from
Mhm.
SEO, i.e.,
Mhm.
organic quotes free traffic from Amazon. Amazon is not going to grace you with ranking, i.e., getting visibility, if you have a lousy conversion rate, because it sends a pretty obvious and probably pretty obvious signal that it's accurate.
Mhm.
People aren't buying your stuff very much. They probably don't like it. Either they don't like the image, or they don't like the review rating, or they don't like the price. So it's not something you can get away with anyway.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's one of those things that I think that new e-commerce sellers don't understand enough until they, have put some mileage on their vehicle, in essence, in
True.
terms of just spending years going around the laps, a few, or whatever the metaphor might be. And then you realize, dang man, if I increase my conversion rate, it really has a radical impact. So there you go. So that's the reason why this is so important at the 30,000 foot view.
Yeah.
And there are obviously then, specific things that are possible in terms of how to do it. Before we move on, Jacob mentioned that yes, people do in fact like to triple their profit. I'm pretty sure that's a positive sentiment amongst all e-commerce sellers.
Yeah, people do want to triple their profit. They've just been distracted by revenue. They've kind of got
Hmm.
profit's important, but right now I'm focused on revenue, as opposed to
Hmm.
revenue's everything. Revenue is not everything. Profit's everything, and revenue's just a metric that leads to that. I think it's
Yeah,
a reversing of priorities, isn't it?
yeah.
Okay, so look, we've established it's really important. So what goes into actually improving our conversion rates? How do we
Hmm.
actually do it?
Yeah. So the short list that I'm going to share here is just my thinking on this. I think added to this list. And so the first thing I would say is the highest quality traffic you can get to your listing on Amazon or to your Shopify store is a central driver to conversion rate. And if you just think about it, 30,000 foot view again, the people who are coming to your site, if you look at your analytics, sometimes you can see, oh, they're on my site for 15 seconds and they leave. I mean, that's not good. And so the quality of the customer or prospect that you send to your site is really, really a determining factor. And that's a whole universe of topics. I mean, there's a lot there to poke around in and think about. But suffice this to say, it's something to put on the list and then to ask yourself the question: how do I get the highest possible quality traffic to my product or my on my website? A few specific tips in that regard is if you improve the number of return visitors or repeat buyers, if that number goes up, your conversion rate number will go up. That is corollary, like all the way, just straight corollary. The higher your returning customer rate, the higher your um, conversion rate. And I have example after example of this because I work with people every single day in their Shopify sites, and you can just look a super low returning customer rate number in Shopify Analytics, and it's in the top right corner. It's the third box on the right. That number, if it's insanely low, the conversion rate will be insanely low. And that number, if it's insanely high, the conversion rate will be insanely high. So, for example, I know of Shopify sites that have a returning customer rate in the 75 to 95% rate, meaning only 25% of the customers visiting or prospects visiting are new to the site, and the conversion rate is in the 15 to 18% range. Now that's those numbers. Most Shopify sellers would be like, I never heard of anything like that. That's like cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. And so this is the idea that the higher quality traffic, the higher the conversion rate. And so that's something to think about. So the other thing that correlates directly to quality of traffic is improving the number of times or the number of percentage points that you can get on any type of win back retargeting for abandoned checkout. Many e-commerce Shopify sites that we work with in the last year or two have benefited tremendously by implementing text, SMS, abandoned checkout follow-up. The core functionality of Shopify now does an abandoned checkout email, and that's cool. But text abandoned checkout through a tool like SMS Bump is a direct benefit of your conversion rate's a direct benefit of that effort. So those are just two ideas related to quality of traffic. I know that I'm sure that there are many other things as you think about Amazon selling situations, Michael, but just the quality, is the first thing to camp on a bit. Yeah.
Yeah, I think again, after an obsession with traffic per se is just an obsession with traffic quantity, isn't it? And again, it's differentiated between quality and quantity, because in the end, I can understand from a simplistic point of view why it seems to translate, because in the end, profit is a number, but that number is weirdly not just a number. It hides the fact that there's a small number of people who love your products driving a big percentage of that number. And I think that's why the quality thing gets lost, because I think it's harder to measure. And I guess I love, by the way, cooking for Cocoa Puffs. I guess what you're saying is 18% conversion rate on Shopify sounds like completely cloud cuckoo land or something.
You don't know cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs?
I have no
it's
idea
an
what that is.
American thing. Oh, that was a commercial for cereal, Cocoa Puff cereal in the 70s.
Cocoa
I'm
Puffs,
a
I know
70s
those.
kid, I guess. Cocoa Puffs.
Yeah, I know Cocoa Puffs, but I've never heard of that. But yeah, so in other words, it sounds like it's complete rubbish, but how is that achievable? And I guess you've answered, it's about that return customer rate. Now, sadly, in the Amazon world, I think it really does matter. We don't get to see those metrics as easily, or they're gradually, Amazon is sort of opening the kimono gradually, reluctantly, eventually to people with brand registry particularly. And there's probably so much that they'll bring out next month, which I'll have missed for this podcast. But we can, of course, get things like subscribe and save, and that comes down partly to type of product choice. There's certain products that lend themselves to that. Famously, the Dollar Shave Club made a huge, business out of that, and you can do a sort of Amazon equivalent to some degree. I was buying some surgical quality face masks because I'm traveling to Germany on Tuesday, and they demand that, and I could have a subscribe and save off an option. It actually took me a couple of minutes to navigate around that listing to find the no, I just want it once option. So they're obviously making it more of a default.
That's right.
And that's one way you can build in returns. But the other thing I wanted to talk about is you mentioned bounce rate, and obviously not something we get to see on Amazon. Amazon do see those metrics. They don't share us with us as third-party sellers. But what other metrics could you use to indicate quality of traffic if you've got your own website?
Yeah, the old school equivalent, I'm just putting in this in our notes, is the old school equivalent for brick and mortar stores is time. I heard this statistic once that there's a direct corollary between time someone spends inside a retail store, a brick and mortar store, and the amount of purchasing that they do. So it's a direct corollary. So if they're in the store for a minute and leave, they're not buying anything. If they're in the store for 10 minutes, they're buying some quantity. If they're in the store for an hour, they're buying a certain multiple of that. So just straight time on on station, time on site in a Shopify store experience or on your listing equates to higher conversion rate. That's why you want to have long form descriptions and information. You want to have as much there as you can for people to consume. videos, multiple photos, infographics, answering all their questions. You don't want them leaving. You want to create a way in which that you keep them there as long as possible. That absolutely correlates to conversion rate, and it's in our notes here, Michael. I think that'd be like a fourth thing, and it's a really, really powerful thing to think about. How can you keep people on your site for maximum amount of time? And usually that gets to things like creative videos, or kind of ways in which they might consume something that's longer, like long form copywriting. So you get the idea. But that's definitely one specific metric. Um, and the bounce rate isn't necessarily the most important thing to me. The bigger issue is the average time on site. And I don't know in Amazon Analytics if they give you that information, but on
Yeah.
Shopify it's something to behold. And of course on a Shopify site you should have Google Analytics plugged in, and
Yeah.
that gives you a lot of detail in that regard as well. Yeah.
Yeah, my experience of Google Analytics is it comes down again to talking about curating. We really need at some point, probably should do a deep dive into how to not deep dive, if you see what I mean. Which 5 metrics actually matter in Google Analytics, because they just overwhelm you with data, don't they? Amazon's the opposite. They don't really give you any of that stuff. But what I could say is, from what you were just saying, it's a reminder to us to, even if it's some of your business is on Amazon, to really create long form content, because we tend to assume, and it's right to assume in a sense, that everyone's shopping on a mobile incredibly quickly, and you have to hit them over the head in your very first image, and you're not
Yeah.
wrong to do that, because the
Yeah.
majority of people, that's probably true. But I would say that it's a good reminder that just because we're not able to see the analytics for that, that it is probably true as a best practice, that we want to give people the opportunity to consume more on that listing if we can, because that correlation is very, very well established. So it's a very good
So
reminder, actually.
we're riffing off each other here because you just gave me this an additional idea, and that is that I think what happens in the consumer's mind is they want to make a quick decision, and we want them to make a quick decision, and we know they're going to make a quick decision. And the question is, what satiates their questions and allows them to make a quick decision? And it's not quick info. It's not like one sentence. One sentence isn't a precursor to a quick decision. Long form copy with a lot of great information about all things related to your product, and so that people can scan it. Some people, to use the Colby assessment tool that Michael, I know you and I like, some people are super quick start people. They can pull the trigger on something as fast as it can just pop into their mind, like, oh yeah, I'm comfortable, okay, let's go. um, and those people, they'll look for, does this have all the signs that it's a good quality product, and boom, I'm ready to go. And so long form copy helps them visually, even if they don't consume every word. And then you've got the other people who want to obsess and stress over a decision. And in that case, you still want the long form copy. So long form copy and videos and those kinds of tools, infographics, all of that, they satiate people's need on both the quick decider and the long, slow decider. And so, yeah, I think that's a key part of this. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, just a couple of reflections on that. I think, first of all, really great point that people scan, and the fact that they're scanning super fast doesn't mean that its absence wouldn't affect your conversion rate. The other way of putting it is that you might scan and then latch onto the one thing you actually care about. But if there were 20 classic objections that most buyers might have, that would be a resistance or a barrier to you buying them, or just make them say no, you don't necessarily know which of the 20 is. Marketing, not sales, right? Even sales, you'd ask them and then you'd home in on that. In marketing, you have to cater to everyone, but that doesn't mean that they're going to read everything. They might just read the one thing. So that's one thing that strikes me. The other one is, yeah, the just because only maybe 20% of people shop more slowly and more carefully doesn't mean you don't want to sell to them, because over time, even if it's only a sort of 5% bump in your conversion rate, if you do the maths of how much effort and money and time you put into putting, say, videos or answering questions versus the additional profit not revenue you're going to get back, I would swear that you'd probably find a huge return on investment.
Yeah, I totally love that. Okay, so there's one wrinkle here between Amazon and Shopify, and that's that on Shopify, you get to control quite a bit of the checkout mechanics.
Mm.
And in Amazon, as a seller, you don't get to participate in any of that work. Um, uh, and so let me just talk through that for a moment for those who are listening who are Shopify sellers. I've had many examples when I've worked with people on their websites. I do site critiques for our, as part of our introductory work for coaching clients, and we go through their site. And sometimes people really struggle with sales or conversion rate, and then we go through their store, we check out, we buy something, and what we find is there's because of the theme they used and the setup steps involved, sometimes a tangled mess of complicated checkout. And some themes are structured in such a way that checkout is simple and obvious. Some themes are too smart by half, or whatever the phrase is, where they just give you too much functionality. And if you set it up wrong, there's little tools like fast checkout or quick checkout. Well, what just happened? Where's the there's just these functionality pieces that you really want to think through and have your checkout experience be as simple as possible. The phrase that comes to mind for this is that a confused mind always says no or goes slow. And in this case, for confusion related to checkout, you don't want them to go slow. You don't want them to slow down at that step. You don't want them to be befuddled by your weird website setup. So that's one thing related to Shopify checkout construct or methodology. And there are a few bits of that. You mentioned, buy and say, or what's it called in Amazon?
Subscribe and
Subscribe
save
and
in the
save.
Amazon world, yeah.
Yeah, same functionality exists now in Shopify. We have clients who have installed that and are seeing it go just month after month, just more and more money flowing through the Subscribe and Save app. And so if it makes sense, if you have a consumable product or something where people are going to buy it that frequently, weekly, monthly, whatever, then absolutely having a Subscribe and Save type app installed so that people can come back or come once, and then really their transaction is like a ghost in your machine. It
Yeah.
just flows through as a new order by trigger, and they're billed. It creates an order for you to fulfill, and they haven't even needed to do anything. So that kind of magic is really
Yeah.
ninja stuff. I mean, that's very cool stuff. So
It is. And by the way, talking about, just kind of blowing past something, there's a book called The Automatic Customer by John Warrillow, I think it is. And he's done a deep dive into the economics of this and basically intentionally setting up subscription-based recurring revenue businesses. And there is huge magic in it. You can sell them for much bigger multiple than a sort of onesie twosies type business. We're talking like 10x profit instead of 3, that sort of difference. And there is more stability in its future income stream. So as a business owner, there's more stability. For the people who buy it, there's more predictability. So it's huge. I mean, so subscriptions should be your next obsession, I think, after conversion rate. Once you've got the customer, like, how do we make them subscribe? And to your point about the subscribe and save thing, and to my experience yesterday buying these simple face masks, I don't need surgical quality face masks in London. I mean, I just have whatever fabric ones that my wife's made, and we've got other ones I just bought. And yet some part of me was tempted to just click it and go, yeah, why not? I need face masks, and just go ahead and subscribe, even though I didn't need them, because they set that up as the easy default option. And I just observed, part of my brain is always observing my buying behavior as a marketer. I'm like, this is fascinating, isn't it? I very nearly subscribed and saved to something I just don't need to subscribe to, because it was set as a default, because there was a bargain, and it wasn't even the money. It was just the fact that there was an assumption closed, like, oh, you want to subscribe and save, right? And I was forced to say, actually, no, I want to opt out of that. Just the same as if you get people to opt into marketing or opt out. If the default is you opt in, then you're going to get way higher subscription rates than if the default is you have to choose to opt in. And so I thought that was an interesting buying experience. So there you go. I think I would really gently nudge people in the direction of subscription every time you can. That's my thoughts.
Tell me the name of that book again.
It's called The Automatic Customer by John Warrillow. Quite complex book. Very, very good book. It's mostly sort of geared to SaaS businesses and stuff, but I don't see that it doesn't apply to physical products businesses. And the Dollar Shave Club is obviously the kind of very often touted example of a business that blew up because of that subscription model.
Well, it's an interesting psychological scenario, isn't it? Because, like in your case, there, one of the factors I would assume is in people's mind is if I click this button, does that mean they're going to have stock and inventory for me in the months to come? Maybe I better just click it because I don't want to not be able to get this in the future. You know what I mean? Like it almost implies that it'll be available because it kind of makes it seem like it would be. And in a way, that's really comforting to people who are, kind of stressed out about can I get toilet paper or whatever cat food or whatever I'm trying to hoard currently for the pandemic or
Yeah, I
whatever. So,
hadn't thought about that. I mean, I guess that's an interesting wrinkle. I guess I'm imagining that this was not created with that in mind because Amazon's done Subscribe and Save for what, 18 months now or something, but
hmm
maybe more. I think it was pre-pandemic that it kicked off,
hmm
in which case I guess it's going to
yeah,
be 2 years.
yeah.
But what I would say is the marketer in me would say, oh, what I should do is just kind of twist the knife a bit,
hmm
problem, agitate, solution, and say, why don't you buy 100 toilet rolls from us now, just in case you can't buy them next month? But obviously, the
Yeah,
supply chain manager in my company would go nuts at me because that would be
right,
a very bad idea.
right.
So sometimes the obvious marketing angle is not practical for your
Mhm.
business cash flow, stock management. And I would
Yeah,
say that that's one to think through, isn't it?
yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
that's a whole different topic, that is. Coming back though to the conversion rate optimization, I know that you wanted to talk about the words that we use, and that's just often kind of blown past as well because everyone says it's all about images, words don't matter, and I don't think that's true. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, absolutely. Another way to really radically impact conversion rate and to get towards this idea of doubling your conversion rate is copywriting and an obsession with copywriting. And so that's just, an obvious area of opportunity. The most effective copywriting wins. And there's something there for all of us, whether on Amazon or Shopify site or on Etsy or eBay or wherever. I think every e-commerce seller should have an arsenal of copywriting related books and really geek out over the word choices and phrases, the way in which you position your product in your copy. And so this is the fourth bucket. In fact, as it happens, I think what we might do for our live audience here is in this introductory session, and then we maybe do a whole nother segment and we talk all about copywriting because we've got the notes for it. And that's really one of the things we can do a deep dive on. So maybe what we do, Michael, is give me your feedback on the copywriting in general related to Amazon and e-commerce work, and then let's wrap this episode, and then we'll just keep going recording wise and do a deep dive into copywriting as a topic.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I think it's absolutely critical. I think having an arsenal of books, and I know you got some really juicy ones coming up in our next episode about this. I agree with having a separate episode on it. Is a really important thing. The main thing I would say about this, and I'm in danger of going to be reiterating this in the next episode, but I'm going to say it again because it's important. As Perry Marshall says, who's a marketer who's been around for 2 decades, and I really respect his quality of thinking apart from anything else. He says, if you're a words-based person, you can survive on your own as a marketer. If you're an image person, you need a words person. Now, I guess he's biased because he's very much an email marketing, very canny email marketer and a thinker, and he's not particularly a visual marketer, I think. But nevertheless, I think it's an important corrective to this idea that we can get on Amazon that you just chuck a load of pretty pictures up, and it's the same on Shopify, I'm sure, and then your job is done. The words do actually have an impact. And I think the way I would put it is that if you haven't clarified things into words, then it's hard to clarify the images. I think that writing well, for me anyway, is a way of making sure you've formed your thoughts clearly. I think Tim Ferriss mentioned this in the 4-Hour Work Week. And I think once you've got very, very clear thoughts about exactly why people should buy your product, really, then is the time, and only is then the time to start putting together your image briefing and getting your photographer in. So for me, if nothing else, the words form the backbone conceptually of a listing. And conceptual might sound a bit abstract, but it is kind of abstract. You're actually trying to sell the abstract. You're selling a feeling of using a certain type of product in the end that is abstract. And I think as long as you recognize that, then it has great power. And so I think that's for me the number one reason why you should obsess with copywriting.
I love that. Yeah. Okay. So if you want, let's do this. Let's wrap this episode, and then we'll just jump right into this copywriting one. And if you're listening on the podcast, then just play the next episode here, or look for the one on copywriting that impacts conversion rate. Some title like that will
Absolutely.
be appropriate there. Yeah.
Sounds great. Well, look, can you summarize why conversion rate matters and the excitement of the conversion rate possibility frontier?
Absolutely. every e-commerce seller has a conversion rate. And if you can double it, you're going to dramatically improve your business. And the e-commerce, conversion rate possibility frontier is just a framework by which you can start to plot this out for your business. It comes down to creating changes to your system that positively impact your conversion rate. And the question is, how good can you get? Can you double it? Can you double it again? There are tools and techniques to do that. Obviously, the first thing is the quality of your traffic coming to your listing or to your website is incredibly important. The second thing is improving your on-site checkout methodology for Shopify sellers in particular. The third thing is keeping shoppers in your store, on your listing, for the maximum amount of time possible. And then the fourth thing is working to improve your copywriting to really be effective at your words and phrases that sell. And that's it, man. That's how you make radical improvements to your conversion rate. And all of us as e-commerce sellers need to work hard on this. And it's going to make a big, big difference in our lives forever if we can figure out how to do this well.
Amazing. Well, I love this topic. And I see repeatedly, by the way, this isn't just a lovely theory. I think we both see with our clients, if you're really obsessed with conversion rate, that has almost magical properties, because once you do it once, it pays you forever. There's no additional cost. You're not selling more products, so you haven't got a cost of goods sold if you're selling physical products, and you're not driving PPC, so you don't have to pay for every click. So there is magic in this economically, and for me, economic magic is business magic. So folks, if you're enjoying today's show, don't forget we've got this whole new exciting concept now with the call-in app. So we're into season 3 of the e-commerce leader, so stay tuned. As ever, don't forget to subscribe on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. Do leave a here's the e-commerce call-in show. So Jason, do you want to just tell us, just about to ask people to leave us a rating on Apple Podcasts, and please do that. But Jason, how do we subscribe to the call-in show on the call-in app?
Yeah, just to make sure everybody's heard kind of what we're doing, we have a new stream of content for this show that we're recording on another app called the Call-In app. Chris Green and Kyle Hamer are our co-hosts in that show. So it's a foursome, and we're doing our hot takes on specific topics. And then we're going to take those files, stream it into the e-commerce leader, podcast on Spotify and Apple and all that. But you can go into the Call-In app and directly subscribe, and even listen live. We're recording 7 a.m. on Tuesdays. And so we'd love to have you do that in the Call-In app. It is the e-commerce leader Call-In show, and people are subscribing. All the cool kids are already subscribed. Just kidding. People are subscribing. And so we just announced it this last week, and we'd love to have you subscribe to the show and follow us. It's designed to be a social podcasting tool. And if it blows up, cool, we'll be there. And so if not, then you can catch the episodes on our normal feed on Spotify or Apple. So there you have it. That's the Call-In show.
Yeah, and I was just going to say, this is part of a chance to be part of a new platform in its fairly early days in the public. So come and be part of it and come and see how that works. I mean, the cool thing is that I think you and I, Jason, we love podcasts as listeners. We love doing podcasts. And this is where Call-In is addressing that missing piece for podcasts, which is really that lack of interactivity, which Facebook has, YouTube has to a degree, but which, isn't necessarily where we want to be as podcast enthusiasts. So come and be part of it and experience it for yourself. And just remains for us to say it's goodbye from him, and it's goodbye from me. And thank you so much for listening to our show all about conversion rate possibility frontiers.
All right. Are we going to just keep going? What do you want to do, man?
Yeah, let's do the copywriting
right? We got an
thing.
audience here, and we got people who are ready to hear about copywriting.
I've even come up with the title, because I know. So folks, if you're listening live, then you won't know that Jason is the man who writes sells the sizzle, not the steak, and is copywriting for the podcast. I always say something like, "Oh, let's just call it e-commerce copywriting 101." And Jason says, "No." So I've come up. I hope you're proud of me, Jason. I've come up with the transformational magic of e-commerce copywriting excellence.
Wow.
Is that good?
Oh, it's great.
This little Brit here trying to become more American and selling the sizzle. So, folks, that's what's coming up. So, should we plunge into this? I guess you better do some kind of instant intro on this. You're the person who's been you got a fantastic outline here you created. So, are you good to do that one as well?
Yeah, sure. Let's do the intro.
Yeah.
Here we go.
Roll credits.
Radically improving your conversion rate comes down to a few key ideas, one of them being the copywriting you use for your products on your website. And in this episode of the E-commerce Leader, we're going to do a deep dive into all things copywriting so that you can transform from where you're at to excellence in copywriting. Michael, are you ready to do that?
I'm absolutely ready to do this. Yeah, I love this topic.
All right, let's do it. So this is a free-form episode here a little bit, but we've got a nice collection of copywriting tips and
Yeah,
tricks that we're going to mention, and the books behind them. And
yeah,
so I think part of the outcome of this episode in particular would probably be a whole stack of books that people might want to go buy.
yeah,
And so you've probably got more in your mind already than I have listed here, and I have a few more. So we're going to have quite a collection of copywriting specific books for people to check out. But let me just mention the first one that I've got on the list here and walk through the concepts in it that are valuable for copywriting. And then Mike would love your perspective on that.
yeah.
The book is Influence by Robert Cialdini. Many people have read this book, and if you're new to it and never read it or seen or heard of it before, it's a fantastic book to get. Cialdini is a science guy, and he talks about persuasion techniques. And so the thesis behind this is influencing people's psychology with specific techniques, or really he writes it in such a way that he explains how people's psychology is influenced by specific techniques, and then of course he realizes everyone wants to apply them. And so let's just talk through those for a minute. The list is a short list and really powerful concepts. The first one's reciprocity, meaning that people are inclined to do something for you if you've done something for them. So giving them something for free creates an environment in which they're predisposed to be, nice back, in essence. That's reciprocity. Commitment and consistency is the next one. And that is that people psychologically want to follow through on things they started. This is where you get the idea of the sunk cost concept or sunk cost fallacy, where people are, I guess you could say in poker terms, they're pot committed. Like if people are into something, then they follow through generally. Their mind wants them to finish those tasks. And so commitment and consistency is a key psychological influence. Social proof is another one. Social proof is the concept that all of us are influenced by what other people like, what other people value. The vanity metrics and social media, as it happens, matter for the purpose of social proof. And you might think vanity metrics are stupid, how many Twitter followers you have or YouTube subscribers or whatever. But to a prospect, it sends a signal. And so that's the power of social proof. The next one is authority, positioning yourself as an authority in the mind of the consumer, central idea. The next one is liking. People buy from people they like. And the old idea of, you want your customers to know, like, and trust you plays into that. And then the final one is scarcity. People are moved powerfully by scarcity, and people want what they can't have, and they're moved by urgency and scarcity triggers for sure. So, Michael, what are your thoughts on Cialdini and his great book and work?
Absolutely love this book. I was introduced to it, gosh, when I first got into internet marketing, probably about 2007. I've got a copy somewhere that I haven't read for a while. That's basically because I've quasi memorized it. I think I've like
Mhm.
got underlinings and highlights and goodness knows what in it. And I think this book is absolutely fantastic. And here's what I take from it. People think marketing, because that's what it looks like, is about words, images, and videos. And I don't think it is at all. I think really the key to great marketing is understanding psychological principles. And really the ones you really need to know about are, if you read no other books about marketing psychology, I think the Cialdini book is the number one that I would recommend. It's very straightforward for a scientist. It's very untechnical, but it's very, very clear. It's very authoritative. There's a lot of studies that go behind stuff. And what's interesting is it comes from the, I don't know, 70s or 80s, but it's still absolutely true today, I think. And what happens now is that digital marketing has become so complex in the medium, that it feels like everything's changed, but I don't think it has, because the psychological principles it's based on are still the same. So for me, the simple use of this book's chapters, and you just outlined those, a really fantastic checklist for starters, in a very practical way, if you just use this and go through your marketing campaigns, is there reciprocity? Are you doing something for your customers before you expect them to do something for you? Often you'll find your email marketing is just, sudden death and nothing else. It's like, hello, we're doing a 90% sale, buy our stuff, thanks. And then nothing for 3 months. The commitment consistent. You're getting people to give you an email address before you get them to do something else, before you get them to buy, before you get them to subscribe. Do you have social proof? Have you got a Facebook group, for example, blah, blah, blah. What authority have you got? Have you got an endorsement by a celebrity, etc.? So if you use it as a checklist, you will massively improve your marketing just by that. So I think there's just so much in this book. I'm a huge fan.
Yeah, I totally agree. Okay, so that's Cialdini. Let's just rattle through these and
Sure.
talk about ideas. I think that would probably be the most common book people have heard of before. There's
Yeah.
another book that I appreciate, and a copywriter I really appreciate. I've followed for more than a decade, and I usually know the quality of copywriters if you get on their email list and you're still following them a year or two later. You're like, okay, they eat their own dog food. They know what they're doing, and they keep me interested. And so Bob Bly is the guy's name. He's not that well known, but he has a book called The Copywriter's Handbook, and he has newsletter, stream that you can get into that is packed with great information. And his 4 S's framework is an interesting little tool, and his goal for it is reader comprehension. One of the most powerful parts of copywriting is the idea of using incredibly simple language to communicate incredibly powerful ideas. And the simpler the language, the more comprehensible it is. And you want reader comprehension to be insanely, good for your work. And so his 4 S's are: number one, small words; number two, short sentences; number three, short paragraphs; and number four, short sections. So in essence, everything chunked down to simple and short, small bits that people can easily understand and comprehend. And in a lot of ways on Amazon, I remember, we've talked about this before on the podcast, Michael, that I was at a conference here in Seattle, and one of the Amazon people got permission to speak at the conference. They don't speak generally, and he was in essence in charge of the product page on Amazon. Like he's been there for like 20 years or whatever, and he's the dude. And he just said, I can't tell you exactly how to rig the system or anything like that, but I can tell you that people radically underutilize the bullet points. So if your bullet points are insanely well constructed and thought through, then you need to look at that as a pro tip. And so, this is very powerful stuff on Amazon. And I think it speaks to what Bob Bly is talking about, where reader comprehension is super important.
Yeah, I really agree with that. I think clarity, it's gradually taken me years to get to this point of simplicity, but I really think clarity is the absolute number one priority for marketing work. And this is the heart of the matter for me. I mean, writing great copy, as in being very, very good at the craft of writing words, is really powerful. But I think what people miss is it's a bigger thing than that. I think before you can communicate clearly to other people, you need to be very, very clear in your mind. And when I say other people, I don't mean just your consumers, although that's obviously important. I mean people like your graphic designers and photographers or videographers. If you're doing, modern marketing on Amazon or Shopify, anything physical product space is very, very visually oriented. But what I think is critical is to use words to clarify for yourself and have conversations as well, and go over and over and refine. And what you tend to find you do is just remove stuff. For example, I've just been writing, it's not for physical products, just been writing scripts for our new sponsor, Eva, the .guru, and to get the podcast script that is really gets everything across, but within 60 seconds or preferably 30 seconds for a pre-roll, is really an art. And you just find yourself getting within cutting. And the great app for this, by the way, is the Hemingway editor. Hemingway is famous American stylist who believes in cutting unnecessary stuff out. And I've got it here. It's really cool. Hemingwayapp.com. You've got to try and aim for fewer than 3 adverbs. Don't use the passive voice more than 3 times. Keep it extremely simple, very short sentences.
Cool.
It's very good, and it really does strip everything down to essentials. And it's that reminds me of that Bruce Lee quote, which is something like, the heart of cultivation is not adding, it is taking away. And it's really true in marketing that a lot of the best marketing seems very simple because it is, but it took a lot of work to get to that point. And
How did
it's
Bruce
not to
Lee
be
come up with
underestimated.
so many wise business
I know.
concepts? I have no
He
idea.
really did. Yeah, I don't know, because he was wise, and wisdom is wisdom, I guess. Yeah, I mean, it really is true. I think that
Yeah.
really great marketers actually consider a lot of options. I mean, if I'm writing
Mhm.
it, I'm not saying a great marketer, but if I'm
Mhm.
writing a title of a talk or something, another thing I went through recently, I had to compress what I was trying to get across with the messaging for the entire business, Amazing FBA, into 10 words for the title of the conference I'm speaking at next week at the White Label Expo in Frankfurt, doing a keynote address there. And it took me about half an hour. And I wrote for like 30 different variations, and eventually came up with something that was, I thought, a honed, if not perfect, 10-word thing. So don't underestimate this. It takes work, but it's really important work, I think.
Yeah, absolutely right. Okay, so that's Bob Bly. The next set of ideas here is from me, from E-commerce Power Book, but they're derivative ideas from other people, so I don't take credit for them in any way. But I'll just say this: for Shopify sellers in particular, for your copywriting and your sales emphasis, you want to focus on the top of your homepage. People horribly mismanage their slider on the top of their homepage, and the number one choice there that people make incorrectly is that they create branding or general marketing messages and put them on a slider. And that, in essence, is a total waste of the top of your site. The top of your site should be a call to action to buy a specific product that you're um, clearly presenting in an appealing way. And ideally, it's a product you know your best product, or a product you know that customers like to buy as a first product. And you want to have that be crystal clear, no ambiguity, and it needs to be changed over time, like probably weekly. So you've got a top of site that changes for when people come back. But most Shopify sites that are failing in terms of conversion rate or sales, the top of their homepage is not very well thought through. And so that's one thing. The second thing is you want to have direct and clear offers, and no ambiguity, no general categories offer, like shop our full collection of everything because we're awesome everywhere and with all our products. It's got to be super concise, like you know our pot holder number 2 in red is 50% off this week, or whatever. The third thing is, single focus, not multi-focus. So this is sort of the same idea. And then, as I said in the prior episode that we were just recording a bit ago, a confused mind says no or go slow. You want to have really, really clear thinking that you're presenting. And then finally, this is not my original phrase, but you want to join the conversation occurring in the customer's mind. You want to speak into what they need, what they're trying to achieve, their fears, their uncertainty, what their goals are. And the better you can speak right into that, the more they'll say, "Oh yeah, these guys get it. These guys know what I want, what I need," and they'll just start right into your sales funnel and check out. Um, so, Michael, any thoughts on those? I know we've talked about those ideas before, but
We have. I mean, they're really great principles. I think that the first couple of principles remind me of Donald Miller's book, Building a Story Brand, which I imagine you know very well based on the emphasis you put on that. And the subtitle of that book is Clarify Your Message so Customers Will Listen. Again, the word clarity is turning up, and also the listening thing, I guess, comes ironically. You want somebody to listen, you probably need to demonstrate that you understand them first for them to even be willing to kind of open up to you. And I think joining the conversation occurring in the customer's mind that you've just said is really subtle work and really important work. And I think to do that, you need to make the effort. And I think, if you're an Amazon seller, don't be lazy about this. It takes more work for you, but you can still do it, which is to say an Amazon seller, artificial distinction. Like if you sell on Amazon mostly, let's say that, you need to make the effort, but you can literally talk to your customers. And I think you should. I think most of us work on the basis of assumption. And assumption is the mother of all F-ups, as we say in the UK. It's not a good starting point. Actual conversation, actual text exchanges, chats, emails, whatever form of interaction, as well as observing buyer behavior, not either or, but both and there.
yeah,
I think it's so important. I think for me, it's fast becoming an obsession that I say to my customers, look, my clients, I should say, please, in however you do it, in whatever form, whether you're a raw startup or really established, please obsess about understanding your customer, because that changes everything you say, show, and do with them.
absolutely right. Okay, the next book on our list is Alex Hormozy, $100 million Offers. How to Make Offers So Good People Feel Stupid Saying No. That book is worth the read. I did it on Audible. I'm going to get the paperback actually because I want to mark it up and look at some of the additional ideas in it just visually. It's that good of a book. One concept in it he says that really stands out to me is just, and I've said this before in prior podcasts, make a list of all your customers' fears, uncertainty, and doubts, their questions or confusions, and then simply reverse the idea and build it into your copy. So, for example, customer might say to you, I don't have time. And your copywriting would be how our product saves you time. It's just that simple. And it's a brilliant copywriting methodology that allows you to have a lot of copy content that is clean, simple, obvious, and is, it's got a foundation that's not just you blathering on about something. The foundation is you're speaking into the mind of the customer. And I love his book for that reason. Any thoughts on that? And then we've got a whole list of books here we probably want to recommend beyond that one.
Yeah, I think that's really great. The two things that are great about it. One is clean, simple, and obvious. Again, to the point of clarity is really important. But the other thing is, as you say, sort of blubbering on about the product. Really, one of the main jobs of sales copy is not to necessarily just build desire for the product or moving towards it, which, although that is important, it's to remove the barriers that get it between the person and fulfilling their desire. In other words, fears, really, or objections. And I think it's really, really smart to build that into your copy, not to just tack it on as a sort of afterthought. Because I guess a lot of products, if people are even on a product detail page, there's an implication that at some level they probably do want the product. So our job is bigger than we think, a bigger percentage of the job than we think, to remove those barriers to buying. I think that is the majority of the work. And so to focus on that way, super smart. I've not read the
Mhm.
book, but I'm definitely going to go get it now.
Yeah, it's definitely worth the read for sure. Okay, so there's other books that are top of mind for me. As I made that list and pulled a few threads out of those books, I realized, oh, I just forgot about a whole bunch of books that are really super powerful. And so I'll just mention them, and we put them on the show notes here as links. One that I would highly encourage people to track down is Eugene Schwartz's Breakthrough Advertising. This book is hard to get because it's out of print, and usually the people put it on eBay or Amazon for like $50 or whatever. So if you can get yourself a copy, you should do that. I don't believe it's in Kindle or Audible, and it is very, very valuable. It's worth going through repeatedly. I'll just tell you that, like, for example, on page 51, there's a list of 38 ways to strengthen your headline, and it's formula based. It's like, and so number one is measure the size of the claim. 2,000 filter traps in a Viceroy, which is, I guess, a cigarette ad. This is old school. I am 61 pounds lighter. Who ever heard of 17,000 blooms from a single plant? Those are measuring the size of the claim. So that's one thing he just mentioned. That's on one page. This book is literally like, it is genius. And that list of 38 things by itself is worth getting the book. So that's Eugene Schwartz. Do you have that book, Michael? Is it even
I
hard to
I
track
do
them down?
not. I've come. Is he the guy who wrote the book that Tim Ferriss recommended in the 4 Hour Work Week, or sort of? Is it Schwartz who wrote Think Big, or The
Hmm.
Magic of Thinking Big? Is that the same guy?
Uh, is it Eugene Schwartz?
It might be a different Schwartz. Yeah.
Maybe I'm looking on uh, Amazon as we speak. I don't know if it's the same guy.
While
Maybe
you
it is.
do that, I've got a couple of other ones. I mean, one
Yeah.
of them is one of my most obsessive, recommendations. Perry Marshall. I just
I knew you're
love
gonna
his
say it. Yeah.
thinking. I'm
Yeah.
a big fan of his thinking. He's a very analytical kind of nerd, so maybe it just resonates with me. But it's
Mhm,
called 80/20 Sales and Marketing. It's a
mhm,
real kind of a grab bag of sales and marketing thoughts, but under the umbrella of the 80/20 idea. And again,
mhm,
because all of us are pretty much overwhelmed 100% of the time, if we allow ourselves to be in the digital space where there's so much information, new techniques to absorb, new platforms, too many metrics, I think it's really, really good to go in with that mentality of simplifying. There's another book which is really old school, Claude Hopkins' Scientific Advertising, which I bought a while ago and then started reading, and it's actually very engaging. I think it's from the 60s or something. It's kind of, I've been watching Mad Men recently, which is all about the Madison Avenue in the 60s. And really, this is like the beginnings of the thinking where you turn from just kind of creating some stuff, as you say, and just chucking it out there and hoping it works, to the beginnings of mass metrics gathering. And that way of thinking, it kind of seems old fashioned. To the idea that it's new seems old fashioned. And yet some of the thinking, and I think it's quite thought provoking, that it's a reminder of nothing else, that we need to kind of base what we're doing on measurement, not just our thoughts, really.
That's funny. We're on season 3 of Mad Men. We just started watching it too.
I'm
So
on
that's
exactly
funny.
the same season. Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Seriously? That's weird.
Yeah, but it is, isn't it? I mean, there's
Yeah.
something fascinating about that
Yeah.
kind of crazy testosterone fueled,
Yeah.
sexist, crazy old school environment, which is
Yeah.
very different to modern advertising, I think. But also, some of the magic of advertising is captured in that. I think the fact that you can come up with a really amazing angle and the concept.
Yeah.
The people who get the big bucks, again, to the talk of concepts. Don Draper, the hero of the show, philanderer, kind of troubled man, but an advertising genius. And his genius is kind of, I think it's two things. It's empathy. So understanding how the customer feels. And I think Seth Godin said amateur marketers need to sell to scratch their own itch because they understand only themselves. But a professional marketer understands what it feels like to be somebody else, can sell somebody else's shoes. And Don Draper's the master of that. And the other thing is conceptual clarity. For example, they're selling their lipstick, and instead of saying they're going to offer 100 different colors of lipstick, they kind of make the point that it's about having one, and each woman wants to make their own choice, and they're going to mark their man. And it's this very powerful image at the center of it. So I think it's kind of fun and educational as well.
It is. Okay, couple other book recommendations on my side. Joe Sugarman has a great book, The Adweek Copywriting Handbook. It is a classic go-to, and he's the famous infomercial marketer. And this book is very well constructed and laid out. As I flip through it here, I'm looking at it. There are just tons and tons of highlights, and I was using colored pencils, obviously, at this point in my highlighting life. I don't know why, but there's all kinds of notes here I've made. This is a goldmine book as well. And then the final one I'll mention is John Capel's Tested Advertising Methods. And so that's a fantastic resource as well. These are kind of the Mad Men era guys. And they're most of their work was done in newspaper, print, and magazine type stuff. But that's a great book as well for people who are looking for it. And I'm sure we're forgetting ones. And copywriters of note and of legend who are really effective that you can go find their work and read from. But those are hopefully some good recommendations for your copywriting library. And I think it's really powerful to start to build that out. Again, all of this goes to expanding your conversion rate and what that possibly could look like for you. Can you double it? Can you double it again? And copywriting central to that idea. Yeah.
The only person we've left out who's really famous, I think, is Gary Halbert, isn't it? Who I haven't really read much of his stuff, but he's famous for his kind of crazy, slightly off-piste, books and things. So I think he'd be worth reading. I think it's the Boron Letters is one of his famous ones, isn't it? I've not really read a lot of his stuff, but I've always been kind of curious about his stuff. So I think that he would be. It's kind of old school and yet, very famous and kind of inspiring. So, wow, we've got quite a list of books for people to read today. Lots to take on board. Can you give a summary for people of maybe not just the books, but also the sort of main takeaways from each book that you recommend, the sort of 4 core books, if you will?
Yeah, absolutely. So copywriting is so central to conversion rate optimization that it's something that all of us should spend a good solid amount of time learning and perfecting. The books we've mentioned include Influence by Cialdini, and his focuses on psychological triggers or influence triggers. The Copywriter's Handbook by Bob Bly, his focus is on reader comprehension and simplicity of messaging. My book, E-commerce Power, you can pick up for a grab bag of random tips and suggestions related to your Shopify site and beyond. The $100 million Offer by Alex Hormozy is a book that's really, really powerful. We didn't mention Ray Edwards, How to Write Copy That Sells. That's a great book. Eugene Schwartz, Breakthrough Advertising. Joe Sugarman, The Adweek Copywriting Handbook. John Capel's Tested Advertising Methods. Where's your list? Sorry, we lost it. Oh, Perry Marshall, 80/20 Sales and Marketing. Claude Hopkins, Scientific Advertising. Gary Halbert, The Boron Letters. John Capel's Tested Advertising Methods, if I didn't say that one. So all of these are books that will help you tune up your copywriting and get better at it over time.
So one thing that strikes me, talking simplicity and clarity of messaging, we have a lot of options for people, and the confused mind does nothing. So, if you had to pick one book or maybe two, where would you, if it's somebody's first book on copywriting, what would you suggest they buy or read?
It's going to shock me to say this. I think maybe it's just the recency effect, which is a thing, but it's the Alex Hormozy book, $100 million Offers. It's so
Wow.
current and
Wow.
it's so digital marketing focused, and it is that good. I would give that book to somebody as a starting point, and then I would say to them, if they're really fascinated by the topic, then they can go deeper into these other older resources. But that one is just current and relevant to digital age. And so, yeah, I think it's a great resource. It's that big a book for me, which is sort
Wow.
of surprising. Yeah.
Yeah, it kind of is surprising to me, and that's a really, really powerful endorsement. You've definitely sold me on the idea of buying that book. Well, folks, hope you've enjoyed today's episode. I certainly have. I've got lots of reading to do, so don't panic. If you need to buy one book, it's the Hormozy book, Alex Hormozy, $100 million Offers. As ever, folks, don't forget, if you're listening to the show and enjoying it, which we hope you are, don't forget to subscribe on whatever podcast player you're on, Spotify, Apple, whatever it is. If you're on Apple Podcasts, don't forget to give us a rating out of 1, 2, 3, 4, or even preferably 5 stars. You don't have to write a review if you're in a hurry. And of course, last but not least, don't forget, we've now launched season 3 with an exciting call-in show. It's the e-commerce leader call-in show. It's on the Call-in app, which is Callin, as you'd expect. So if you just download that to your phone, I think it's iPhone only at the moment, as I understand it. And so if you're an Android user, go and pester them, and hopefully they will produce that Android version soon. And we've got really exciting conversations already kicked off. It's a 4-way conversational basic format with Chris Green, very big name in the Amazon space for lots of different things, and Kyle Hamer, which is the other powerhouse thinker in Jason's Winning on Shopify, which I know is going to be rebranded soon. So definitely worth checking out. And you've got some really good guests coming up as well, haven't you? You've got Kate coming in to talk about some retail arb things as well, haven't you? Still muted, I'm afraid.
Sorry. We were going to have Kate until we found out she has an Android phone and that Call-in app only works for iPhone. So maybe TBD on future guests.
Yes.
A little bit of a wrinkle. But you're going to be traveling this Tuesday, so we're going to wing it without you as our recording occurs. But yeah, so we'll see how that plays out going forward. But we do hope to have guests, and even people who are listeners who want to call in and be popped into the show on the app and have conversations with us. So in the future, we're going to take that format into fun directions. Yeah.
Absolutely. So, folks, lots of places to connect with us. Please do connect. And thank you so much for your time and attention. Attention is the scarce commodity these days. We're really grateful to have it and honored to try and serve you the best we can, whether it's on YouTube, Facebook, podcast apps, or even on the Call-in app. We're all over the place now. So thank you so much for listening and watching.
Bye, everybody.